The sound of liberation. The thunder of artillery had finally ceased, replaced by an eerie silence that hung over the small Bavarian village of Rothenburg like a shroud. Anna Hoffmann pressed her forehead against the cool glass of her attic window, watching as columns of smoke rose from the eastern edge of town where the Wehrmacht had made their last stand. She was 16 years old, and for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be truly afraid. Below, in the cobblestone street, her neighbors huddled in doorways and cellars, whispering prayers and clutching whatever precious belongings they could carry. Everyone knew what came next. The Americans were coming, and with them would come retribution for years of Nazi rule, for the concentration camps, for the millions dead across Europe. Anna's father, a reluctant party member who had joined only to keep his bakery, had burned his uniform 3 days ago, the acrid smell of wool and cotton still lingering in their courtyard. Her mother, Margarete, moved through their modest home like a ghost, hiding jewelry, photographs, anything that might connect them to the regime. Her hands trembled as she worked, and Anna noticed how much older she looked than her 42 years. The war had aged everyone, carved lines into faces that shouldn't have them, stolen youth from an entire generation. The sound of engines cut through the morning air, American engines, different from the German ones Anna had grown accustomed to. Jeeps and trucks, the mechanical heartbeat of the liberating army. She watched as the first vehicles rolled into the town square, olive green and foreign, festooned with white stars that seemed to mock the swastikas that had decorated every building just weeks before. Soldiers poured out, rifles at the ready, their faces hard and watchful. These were not the clean, propagandized images of American soldiers that German newsreels had shown. Weak, cowardly, inferior. These men looked tired but determined, victorious but wary. They moved with purpose through the streets, securing buildings, shouting orders in English that echoed off medieval walls that had stood for 600 years. Anna's younger brother, Friedrich, only 12, crept up beside her. "Will they kill us?" he whispered, his voice cracking with fear. Anna wanted to lie, to tell him everything would be fine, but she couldn't force the words past her lips. Instead, she pulled him close, feeling his thin body shake against hers. Their father appeared in the doorway, his baker's apron still dusty with flour from the morning's work. Routine had been his rebellion, his way of maintaining sanity while the world burned. "Come downstairs," he said quietly. "We must face whatever comes together, as a family." His eyes were red-rimmed, but his voice steady. He had survived the Great War as a young man. He would face this with dignity. The family gathered in their small kitchen, sitting around the wooden table that had been in Margarete's family for 3 generations. The smell of yesterday's bread lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of fierce sweat and uncertainty. Through the window, they could hear boots on cobblestones, doors being kicked in, frightened voices raised in German and English. Anna closed her eyes and thought of her best friend, Sarah Goldstein, who had disappeared with her family in 1942. She thought of the whispers, the rumors, the carefully cultivated ignorance that had allowed horrors to unfold while ordinary people lived their ordinary lives. Now, judgment had arrived, and it wore an American uniform. The knock on their door, when it came, was loud and authoritative. Not the polite knock of neighbors or friends, but the knock of authority, of power, of consequence. Her father stood slowly, straightened his apron, and walked to face whatever fate awaited them. Anna grabbed Friedrich's hand and squeezed, feeling her mother's hand find her shoulder. Together, they waited for the door to open and their reckoning to begin. The Americans at the door. The door swung open to reveal 2 American soldiers, one tall and lean with lieutenant's bars on his collar, the other shorter and stocky, a sergeant by his stripes. Both had their rifles slung over their shoulders, not pointed but ready. The lieutenant's eyes were a startling blue, and they swept over the Hoffman family with an expression Anna couldn't quite read. Not hatred, not quite sympathy, something more complex. "Anyone speak English?" the lieutenant asked, his voice carrying a slight accent Anna would later learn was from somewhere called Iowa. When met with silence, he tried again in halting, heavily accented German. "Deutsch sprechen?" We're searching all houses. Anna's father nodded slowly. I am Otto Hoffmann. This is my wife, Margarete, and my children, Anna and Friedrich. We are bakers. Please, we have done nothing. His voice trailed off, the lie obvious even to himself. They had done nothing, and that was precisely the problem. They had watched and waited and baked their bread while the world burned. The sergeant pushed past them into the house, his eyes hard and suspicious. He moved through rooms with practiced efficiency, opening cupboards, checking under beds, his boots leaving muddy prints on Margarete's carefully scrubbed floors. The lieutenant remained in the doorway, his gaze fixed on Otto. Party member, he asked directly, his mangled German making the question sound even more ominous. Otto's shoulders slumped. Yes, to keep the bakery, to feed my family. I did not believe in. He stopped, unable to finish any sentence that might make it better or worse. The lieutenant pulled out a small notebook, flipping through pages filled with names, addresses, notes. Anna watched her father's face go pale as he recognized what it was, a list compiled from Nazi Party records the Americans had seized. Everything documented, everything accounted for, the German efficiency that had built an empire now used against them. Otto Hoffmann, baker, member since 1937, no SA or SS affiliation, no record of denunciations, local party meetings only, the lieutenant read aloud. He looked up, his blue eyes meeting Otto's. You're what we call a nominal member. Small fish. His tone suggested this might save them, or might not matter at all. The sergeant emerged from the back rooms, shaking his head. Clear, Lieutenant. No weapons, no uniforms, no nothing. He glanced at the family huddled together, and something in his expression softened slightly. Just people. Friedrich suddenly burst into tears, the fear and tension too much for his 12-year-old composure. Margarete pulled him close, her own eyes brimming. Anna stood frozen, waiting for whatever came next. Arrest, deportation, execution. She didn't know, couldn't imagine. The lieutenant closed his notebook and studied them for a long moment. Anna met his gaze, refusing to look away, wanting him to see that they were human, that they were afraid, that they were sorry, even if the words wouldn't come. She saw him assess her, saw something shift in his expression. The baker, yes, he said finally, gesturing toward the shop attached to their house. Still baking. Otto nodded numbly. Until the flour runs out. Perhaps another week, maybe two. The lieutenant exchanged a look with his sergeant that Anna couldn't interpret. Then, incredibly, unexpectedly, the sergeant smiled. A small, tired smile that seemed to crack through layers of war weariness. We haven't had real bread in 6 months, he said in English to his superior. Just those damn K-rations. My thinking exactly, Sergeant Miller, the lieutenant replied, also in English, before switching back to his tortured German. You will bake for American soldiers. We will pay. Dollars, or cigarettes, or rations to trade. Fair price. You agree? Otto stared at him, unable to comprehend what was being offered. Not punishment, but business. Not justice, but pragmatism. Ah, yes. Yes, of course. Whatever you need. The lieutenant nodded briskly. Good. We establish command post in town hall. You bring bread tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. We discuss further then. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at the family. In careful, practiced German, he added, We are not here for revenge against families. We are here to end the war and go home. You help us, we help you. That is the deal. The morning after, dawn broke over Rothenburg with the surreal quality of a half-remembered dream. Anna had barely slept, lying awake listening to the sounds of occupation. Jeeps rumbling through streets, American voices calling to each other, the occasional bark of laughter that seemed obscene in its normalcy. How could anyone laugh when the world had just ended? At 4 in the morning, Otto rose and descended to the bakery, moving through the familiar motions with mechanical precision. Anna heard him moving below, heard the creak of the oven door, smelled the first hints of baking bread. She dressed quietly and slipped downstairs, finding her father standing before the massive brick oven that his grandfather had built in 1889. "Let me help," she said softly. He turned, surprised, then nodded. "Your mother used to help me, before the children came." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "She was terrible at kneading. Too gentle. Bread needs strength." They worked together in comfortable silence, measuring flour from their dwindling supplies, mixing water and yeast and salt with practiced hands. The dough came together, and Anna fell into the rhythm of kneading, push, turn, fold, a meditation older than memory. Outside, the occupation continued, but here in the warm bakery, time moved differently. "What do you think will happen to us?" Anna asked finally, voicing the question that had kept her awake. Otto was quiet for a long moment, his hands working the dough with steady pressure. "I don't know, labeling. The Americans are not like the Russians. This much we hear. They have rules, laws, processes. But we were part of it, even if we tried to pretend we weren't." Sarah's family. His voice broke, and he cleared his throat roughly. "The Goldsteins trusted us, and we did nothing when they took them." Anna felt tears burn her eyes. Sarah, with her wild, curly hair and infectious laugh, who had taught Anna to play chess and shared her dreams of becoming a doctor. Gone, disappeared into the night, and the next day Anna had walked past the empty shop without saying a word to anyone. "I was a coward," Otto continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told myself I was protecting you, protecting Friedrich, protecting our business. But really I was just afraid. And now," he gestured vaguely toward the window, toward the American presence outside. "Now we face the price of our fear." The loaves took shape under their hands, solid, substantial, honest in their simplicity. As the first batch went into the oven, the eastern sky began to lighten, painting the medieval towers in shades of amber and rose. It seemed impossible that beauty could still exist after everything that had happened. At 5:30, with 6 dozen loaves cooling on wooden racks, Otto and Anna loaded them into baskets. The bread was dark rye, dense and hearty, made the German way. Otto had added a touch of caraway seed, a small act of pride in his craft despite everything. "Should we bring Mother and Friedrich?" Anna asked as they prepared to leave. Otto shook his head. "Let them rest. This is between the Americans and me. You should stay too." "No," Anna interrupted firmly. "We face things together. You said so yourself." They walked through empty streets toward the town hall, their footsteps echoing off ancient stone. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of bread and the lingering smoke from distant battles. American soldiers stood guard at intersections, watching them with wary eyes. Anna kept her gaze forward, her chin up, carrying her basket with as much dignity as she could muster. The town hall square was transformed. Military vehicles crowded the space where farmers' markets had once been held, where Nazi rallies had once gathered the town to hear speeches and sing songs of conquest. Now the American flag hung from the medieval facade, red and white stripes bright against gray stone. Lieutenant Morrison, Anna had learned his name from whispered conversations between neighbors, stood on the steps, talking with several other officers. He saw them approach and said something to his companions, who turned to watch with interest. "Ah, the baker," Morrison said, attempting another smile. "Right on time. German punctuality, yes?" His terrible accent made Anna want to simultaneously cringe and laugh. Otto set down his baskets and straightened. Fresh bread, as requested. Dark rye, traditional recipe. An unexpected invitation. Sergeant Miller appeared from inside the town hall, his face lighting up at the sight of the bread. He broke off a piece from one of the loaves, sniffed it appreciatively, then took a bite. His eyes closed in something approaching ecstasy. "Lieutenant, this is the real deal. Actual bread, not that sawdust we've been eating." Morrison tried to piece himself, and Anna watched as his professional demeanor cracked slightly. "This is excellent, Herr Hoffmann. Truly excellent." He called something in English to the soldiers gathering nearby, and several came forward eagerly, pulling out strange paper bills and small cans and packages. "We pay now," Morrison said, gesturing to the growing pile of American goods on the steps. "Cigarettes good for trade, yes? And coffee Chocolate can meet. Worth more than dollars in Germany now. Otto stared at the payment, his face unreadable. It was far too much, far more than the bread was worth, even in normal times. Anna understood what it meant. Not just payment, but a statement, a declaration that the Americans intended to be fair, to establish order through economic exchange rather than punishment. This is too much, Otto managed to say. Morrison shrugged. Our boys are happy. Happy soldiers are good soldiers. You make them happy, we pay well. Business, yes. He paused, then added in his broken German. Also, we need more. Can you bake every day? If I have flour, sugar, yeast, Otto replied. Our supplies are very low. We provide supplies, Morrison said firmly. American Army has plenty. You bake, we pay, everyone happy. Is good arrangement, yes? Anna watched this exchange with a growing sense of unreality. This was not how occupation was supposed to work, not based on anything she had learned or heard. Where was the punishment? The retribution? The Americans were treating her father like a valued contractor, not a conquered enemy. Miller was distributing bread to the gathering soldiers, who tore into it with an enthusiasm that surprised Anna. These were the victors, the conquerors, and yet they seemed almost pathetically grateful for simple bread. One young soldier, who couldn't have been much older than Anna herself, closed his eyes as he chewed, and she saw tears on his cheeks. First real food that tastes like home in 8 months, Miller explained, noticing her stare. Most of these boys are farm kids, small-town kids. They know good bread when they taste it. He looked at her directly for the first time, his brown eyes kind despite the hardness war had etched into his features. How old are you, miss? 16. Anna replied in careful English, her first words in the language. She had studied it in school before the war, though speaking it had become dangerous as the conflict intensified. You speak English, Morrison observed, switching languages. This is good. Very good. We need translators, people who can help with civilian affairs. You will be willing to help. Anna glanced at her father, who looked stunned. My English is not very good, she said hesitantly. Only school English. Better than nothing, Morrison replied. Better than my German, certainly. He smiled, and it transformed his face from stern to almost boyish. We need help organizing food distribution, medical care, getting this town running again. War is over here, but peace needs work too. You help us, we pay you. Plus, rations for your family. Your father bakes, you translate, everyone benefits. It was too much, too fast, too unexpected. Anna felt dizzy with the sudden shift from fear to something approaching hope. Why are you being kind to us? The question burst out before she could stop it. We are Germans. We are your enemies. You should hate us. Morrison's smile faded, replaced by something more complex. Hate is expensive, miss. Hate costs energy we don't have. We hate Hitler, hate the SS, hate what the Nazi regime did. But you, he gestured to her and Otto, to the town beyond. You are just people who got caught up in something terrible. We end this war by helping people rebuild, not by punishing everyone. But the camps, Anna whispered, tears suddenly streaming down her face. The terrible things that were done will be answered for, Morrison interrupted firmly. Those responsible will face justice. Allied tribunal, proper courts, proper punishment. But that is different from collective punishment. That is different from treating every German like a war criminal. He paused, his expression softening. Do you know what my orders are, Miss Hoffman? Find collaborators and war criminals, yes. But also, and I quote, establish friendly relations with civilian populations where possible to facilitate reconstruction and prevent resistance. The Army wants peace, not endless occupation. Sergeant Miller rejoined them, carrying tin cups. Made some coffee, he said in German that was somehow even worse than Morrison's. Real American coffee. You try. He offered the cups to Anna and Otto with a shy smile. Otto took his cup with trembling hands, staring at it as if it might explode. Anna followed his lead, bringing the cup to her lips. The coffee was strong, almost bitter, nothing like the roasted grain substitute they had been drinking for years. It was real, and it was being offered by men who should have been their enemies. This is coffee? Otto asked wonderingly. True coffee. From Brazil, Miller confirmed proudly. We get shipped in. Not great, but it's real. He raised his own cup. To peace. Morrison raised his cup as well. To peace, he echoed in English, then in German. Anna and Otto exchanged looks, then raised their cups. To peace, they repeated, the words feeling strange and fragile in their mouths, like something that might shatter if spoken too loudly. They drank together in the morning sun, victors and vanquished, standing on the steps of a town hall that had seen 600 years of history, drinking coffee and eating bread while the world began its slow, painful journey toward healing. The price of coffee. Word spread through Rothenburg like wildfire. The Americans were paying for goods and services. They were fair, even generous. They wanted cooperation, not conflict. By midday, a small line had formed outside the town hall. Farmers with eggs and milk, a cobbler offering to repair boots, an old woman with jars of preserved fruit from better times. Anna stood beside Lieutenant Morrison, translating as best she could, her school English improving with each exchange. The Americans paid in goods that were worth their weight in gold and defeated Germany. Cigarettes that could be traded for anything, coffee that was a luxury beyond measure, chocolate that children had forgotten existed. But not everyone was pleased. Anna saw Frau Weber, the butcher's wife, standing across the square with her arms crossed, her face twisted in disgust. Beside her, her Dietrich, who had been a devoted party member and had lost both his sons on the Eastern Front, glared at the collaborative scene with undisguised hatred. They will not forget this, a voice said softly behind Anna. She turned to find Ernst Zimmermann, a young man who had returned from the war, missing his left arm. He had been a few years ahead of her in school. A talented musician before the war had taken everything from him. Already they're calling your father a collaborator. And you, working for the Americans. We need to eat, Anna replied defensively. We need to survive. What choice do we have? Ernst's expression was unreadable. None. That is exactly the point. We have no choices left. So we do what we must, and history will judge us. He walked away before Anna could respond, his empty sleeve pinned to his jacket, a living reminder of the cost of loyalty to a failed regime. Morrison noticed the exchange. Problem? He asked, his eyes following Ernst's retreating figure. Some people are not happy about cooperation with Americans, Anna explained carefully. Resistance. Morrison's hand moved unconsciously toward his sidearm. We will deal firmly with resistance. No, not resistance, Anna clarified quickly. Just anger. Bitterness. They feel defeated, humiliated. Working with you makes it real, makes the defeat undeniable. Morrison relaxed slightly. This is natural. This is expected. We have psychologists, experts in occupation administration. They tell us to expect resentment, hostility, passive resistance, but also pragmatism. People want to survive, to feed their families. Eventually, pragmatism wins. He smiled grimly. Usually, that evening, as Anna and Otto walked home laden with American goods, they found their bakery's window smashed, shards of glass glittering on the cobblestones like scattered diamonds. Painted in crude letters across the wooden door was a single word: Werder, traitor. Otto stood frozen, staring at the vandalism. His hands clenched into fists, then slowly relaxed. So, it begins, he said quietly. The war after the war, German against German. Margarethi appeared in the doorway. Friedrich behind her, both their faces pale with fear. I heard the glass break, she said, her voice shaking. I saw someone running away, but I could not see who. Anna felt rage burning her chest, hot and fierce. We have done nothing wrong. We are surviving, that is all. Why should we starve to prove our what? Our German pride? Our loyalty to a regime that destroyed us? Because for some people, the alternative to pride is shame, Otto replied wearily. And shame is unbearable, so it becomes rage, and rage seeks a target. He began picking up glass with his bare hands, pieces catching the fading light. We clean this up. We repair. We continue. What else can we do? They worked together as a family, sweeping glass, and boarding up the broken window with scraps of what Otto had saved. Neighbors watched from behind curtained windows, but no one offered to help. The message was clear. The Hoffmans had chosen a side, and it was the wrong one. That night, Anna lay awake listening to her mother weep quietly in the next room, her father's low voice attempting comfort. Friedrich had crawled in her bed like he used to when he was small, seeking the security of his older sister's presence. "Are we bad people?" he whispered in the darkness. Anna pulled him close, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, innocent despite everything. "No, Fritzy, we're just people trying to survive. The war made everyone do things they are not proud of. Now the war is over, and we must find a way to live with what we did and did not do." "I am scared," he admitted. "I am too," Anna replied honestly. "But we face it together. That is what families do." Choosing sides. Over the following weeks, Rothenburg settled into an uneasy new normal. American troops established order with surprising efficiency, rebuilding infrastructure, organizing food distribution, establishing curfews and regulations. Lieutenant Morrison's unit remained stationed in the town hall, and Anna found herself spending more and more time there, her role as translator evolving into something like a liaison between the occupiers and the occupied. The work was exhausting but absorbing. She helped elderly Frau Klein register for food rations. She translated medical information when army doctors held a clinic for malnourished children. She assisted as Morrison interviewed former party members, determining who was genuinely dangerous and who had simply been swept along by history's tide. She learned that Morrison was 26 years old, from a farm in Iowa, that he had studied law before the war and planned to return to it after. She learned that Sergeant Miller wrote letters to his wife every single night, long, detailed accounts of his day that would be mailed whenever transport was available. She learned that the young soldier who had cried over bread was named Tommy, that he was 19 and terrified he would never make it home. She learned, too, that the Americans were not angels. They drank too much sometimes, were casual about requisitioning property, treated the Germans with a mixture of pity and contempt that was perhaps worse than open hatred. But they were also just young men far from home, tired of war, wanting nothing more than to return to their lives. Otto's bakery thrived under the American patronage. With steady supplies of flour and other ingredients, he was able to bake bread not just for the troops, but for the town, establishing a distribution system that Morrison approved. The Hoffmans ate better than they had in years, and slowly, grudgingly, other townspeople began to accept the new reality. But the vandalism continued. Windows broken, walls defaced, threatening notes left on doorsteps. Anna knew who was behind it. The bitter remnants of the party. Men like her Dietrich who could not accept defeat, who clung to their hatred like drowning men clutching driftwood. But they were careful, always acting at night, never leaving evidence. Then Ernst Zimmermann was beaten in an alley, left with broken ribs and a concussion. The message was clear. Working with the Americans had consequences. Morrison was furious, ordering patrols increased and questioning suspects, but no one would talk. The wall of silence that had protected neighbors from the Gestapo now protected them from American justice. "We cannot protect everyone all the time," Morrison admitted to Anna one afternoon, frustration evident in his voice. "We do not have enough men, enough resources, and we cannot occupy forever. Eventually, we leave, and then what? Do these collaborators, do your people who help us, do they become targets?" It was a question Anna had been asking herself. What happened when the Americans inevitably left? Would the Hoffmans be safe? Would any of them who had chosen cooperation over resistance? "Maybe we should go," she said suddenly. "My family. Maybe we should leave Rothenburg, go somewhere no one knows us, start over." Morrison looked at her with something like pity. "Where would you go? Germany is destroyed, divided. The Americans, the British, the French, the Russians, we each control our sectors, but movement is restricted. And everywhere it is the same, survivors trying to rebuild, old hatreds brewing, scores being settled. Running solves nothing. Then what do we do?" Anna's voice broke slightly. "We cannot fight them. We're not soldiers, not heroes. We're just trying to live. You be brave, Morrison said simply. You continue to do what is right, even when it is hard, even when it is dangerous. You show others that cooperation is possible, that peace is possible. You become the example. That is a lot to ask of a baker's daughter, Anna replied with bitter humor. Morrison smiled. Yes, yes, it is. But war asks much of everyone. Peace asks even more. That evening, a town meeting was called, not by the Americans, but by the Germans themselves. Father Müller, the old Catholic priest who had somehow navigated the Nazi years without being imprisoned or co-opted, had convinced Morrison to allow it. The church hall was packed, filled with faces Anna had known her entire life, now turned toward her father as he stood before them. Otto looked older in the lamplight, worn by years of war and weeks of stress. But his voice was steady as he spoke. We all survived the Reich. We all made compromises. We all did things we wish we had not done, and failed to do things we should have. Now the Americans are here, and we must choose again. Do we resist and starve? Do we hold on to our pride and watch our children go hungry? Or do we work and rebuild and try to create something better from the ashes? The breaking point. The response to Otto's speech was immediate and divided. Roughly half the room nodded in agreement, faces showing the relief of having someone articulate what they had been thinking. The other half erupted in angry shouts, accusations of cowardice and betrayal raining down on the Hoffman family. Dietrich stood, his face purple with rage. You speak of rebuilding? While our cities lie in ruins, while our soldiers rot in prisoner camps, while those who fought for Germany are hunted like dogs. He pointed an accusing finger at Otto. You profit from our defeat. You grow fat on American bread while German patriots starve. Otto met his gaze steadily. My son eats because I work. My daughter lives because we cooperate. If that makes me a traitor to your Germany, then I'm a traitor. But I am loyal to my family and to life itself. Coward, someone shouted from the back. Father Müller raised his hands for silence. Enough. We have had enough of hatred, enough of division. The war is over. We lost. This is reality, whether we accept it or not. The question before us now is simple. Do we survive together, or do we destroy each other while the world watches? Ernst Zimmermann stood slowly, his empty sleeve drawing eyes. I lost my arm at Kursk. I lost my brother at Stalingrad. I lost my faith in everything I was taught to believe. And you know what I learned? His voice was quiet but carried through the hall. I learned that ideals are luxuries for those who can afford them. I learned that survival is not cowardice. It is the only victory left to us. Herr Hoffman is right. We work, we rebuild, we live. Or we die clinging to a flag that no longer flies. The room fell silent. Ernst's words carried weight that Otto's could not. He had bled for Germany, had given his flesh and blood to the cause. If he could advocate for cooperation, then perhaps it was not simply cowardice. But Dietrich was not finished. And when the Americans leave, when we are alone again, German with German, what then? Will you remember who collaborated? Will you remember who profited from our defeat? The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Morrison chose that moment to enter the hall, Sergeant Miller at his side, both in full uniform. The room tensed, Americans at a German gathering, a clear violation of the boundaries everyone had been carefully maintaining. Gentlemen, ladies, Morrison said in his terrible German, then switched to English while Anna translated. I come not to interfere in your discussion, but to make certain facts clear. First, any violence against civilians cooperating with Allied forces will be treated as serious crime. Perpetrators will be arrested, tried, and punished. Second, the American occupation is not temporary. We will remain in Germany for years, perhaps decades, until we are satisfied that democracy has taken root and fascism has been eliminated. Those who resist this reality will find themselves very uncomfortable. He paused, letting Anna's translation catch up, then continued. But I also say this. We do not wish to be occupiers forever. We wish to be partners. We wish to help Germany rebuild as peaceful, democratic nation. Those who work with us make this goal possible. Those who resist make it impossible. The choice is yours. After the meeting, As people filed out in angry knots of conversation, Anna found herself cornered by a group of young women her age. Greta, who had been her friend before the war, led them. "How can you work for them?" Greta demanded, her pretty face twisted with contempt. "They bomb our cities, kill our brothers and fathers, and now you smile and translate for them?" Anna felt something snap inside her. Where were you when they took the Goldsteins? Where was your righteous anger then? You want to be angry now, when it is safe, when the monsters have been defeated? You want to cling to your pride and your hatred? Fine. Start with your pride. I choose to live. She pushed past them, tears of rage and frustration burning her eyes. Behind her, she heard Greta spit on the ground, the insult unmistakable. Anna did not turn back. That night, the attacks escalated. The bakery was set on fire. Anna woke to smoke and Friedrich screaming. The flames had started in the shop below, already consuming the ovens and wooden counters that were Otto's livelihood. Her father was on the stairs, shouting for everyone to get out, smoke billowing up through the floorboards. They escaped through a rear window, dropping into the courtyard as the front of the building became an inferno. Neighbors emerged from their homes, but no one moved to help. No one rushed with buckets of water. They simply watched as the Hoffmans' life burned. American soldiers arrived within minutes, alerted by their patrols. They organized a water line from the town fountain, but it was too late for the bakery. The shop was destroyed, the ovens ruined, months or years of work reduced to ash and blackened stone. Morrison found them huddled in the courtyard wrapped in blankets, watching the smoldering ruins. His face was grim as he approached Otto. "I'm sorry. We failed to protect you. This is unacceptable." Otto stared at the ruins, his expression hollow. "Perhaps they are right. Perhaps I should not have cooperated. Perhaps I should have chosen pride over pragmatism." "No," Anna said fiercely, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "They did this because they are afraid. They are afraid that we are right. That cooperation is the only path forward. They want us to be as miserable as they are. We cannot let them win." From ashes, hope. The investigation into the bakery fire was swift and surprisingly effective. Footprints in ash, a discarded can that had contained accelerant, and finally, witnesses who had seen shadows in the night. Herr Dietrich was arrested, along with 2 younger men who had followed his bitter leadership. They were taken to the American military prison to await trial for arson and intimidation. But the victory felt hollow to Anna. The bakery was gone. Their home was damaged. The wall of silence in the community had been breached, but at what cost? Trust, once broken, was nearly impossible to repair. Morrison arranged temporary housing for the family in a requisitioned building near the town hall. "Just until you rebuild," he said, but everyone knew rebuilding would take months, perhaps years. Germany was full of ruins. One more made little difference. The morning after the fire, Anna reported to work as usual, translating for Morrison as he processed the daily business of occupation. He looked at her with something approaching admiration. "You did not have to come. After what happened?" "After what happened, I have even more reason to be here," Anna interrupted. "If I hide, if I give up, then they win. They get to define what it means to be German. Hatred, bitterness, living in the past. I refuse to accept that definition." Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. The burning of the bakery became a turning point. People who had been fence-sitting, quietly cooperating, but never openly supporting collaboration, began to speak up. A carpenter offered his services to rebuild the ovens. A farmer brought extra eggs and milk for the Hoffman family. Even Greta, shamefaced, approached Anna one day with a small basket of apples. "I was wrong," she said simply. "About you, about the Americans, about everything. My mother says we must let go of the past to have any future." She paused, then added, "I am sorry about Sarah, too. I should have said something then. I should have done something." Anna took the apples, tears stinging her eyes. "We all should have. That is the guilt we must live with. But maybe if we do better now, if we build something better from the ruins, maybe that is how we honor those we failed." Father Mueller organized work parties to rebuild the bakery, combining German labor with American materials. It became a community project, a physical manifestation of the choice Rothenburg was making. Not everyone participated. Some still clung to their bitterness, still whispered about traitors and collaborators. But enough people came, enough hands lifted hammers and mixed mortar that slowly, impossibly, the bakery began to rise again. Morrison watched the reconstruction with satisfaction. This is what we hoped for, all across Germany. Communities coming together, choosing to rebuild rather than nurse their wounds. You Hoffmans, you did not just bake bread. You gave people an example of courage. It does not feel like courage, Anna admitted. It feels like survival. Most courage does, Morrison replied. The heroic moments, the grand gestures, those are rare. Real courage is getting up every day and doing what is right even when it is hard, even when you are afraid, even when no one thanks you for it. On a crisp morning in November, 6 months after the Americans had arrived, the new bakery opened. It was not as large as the old one, and the ovens were smaller, more efficient, built with American engineering and German craftsmanship. But it worked, and that was what mattered. Otto baked his first loaves in the new ovens, the familiar rhythm returning to his hands. Anna helped him, as did Friedrich. Even Margarete emerged from her depression to knead dough beside her husband. They were a family still, damaged but not broken, surviving together. When the first customers arrived, they were both German and American. Morrison was there, and Miller, and young Tommy, who still wrote letters to his mother in Missouri. But also Herr Klein and Frau Schmidt, and even Ernst Zimmermann with his empty sleeve and haunted eyes. They ate bread together, warm, fresh, honest bread that tasted like home and hope and the possibility of forgiveness. The coffee Morrison provided was still terrible, weak, and bitter, but they drank it anyway, Germans and Americans, former enemies now sharing a moment of simple humanity. To peace, Morrison said, raising his tin cup as he had that first morning so many months ago. To peace, they echoed, German and English blending into a single sentiment. Anna looked at the faces around her, her family, her neighbors, the American soldiers who had become something like friends. She thought of Sarah Goldstein, of all those who had not survived to see this moment. She thought of the guilt they would all carry forever, the knowledge that they had been complicit through their silence, their fear, their desire to simply survive. But she also thought of the future, of the small moments of kindness that were slowly rebuilding trust, of the community coming together to raise a bakery from ashes. The war had destroyed so much, had revealed the worst of humanity. But here, in this small moment, in this gathering of former enemies breaking bread together, she saw the possibility of something better. It would not erase what had been done. It would not bring back the dead or absolve the guilty. But it was a beginning, a first step on a long road towards something approaching redemption. The coffee was terrible, but Anna drank it anyway, and when she smiled at Lieutenant Morrison, he smiled back, and for just a moment, the weight of history lifted, and there was only the present, only the taste of bread and coffee, only the hope that tomorrow might be better than yesterday. Outside, the medieval towers of Rothenburg stood as they had for 600 years, witnesses to countless wars and peace, to empires rising and falling, to humanity's endless capacity for both cruelty and compassion. The towers would stand for centuries more, long after everyone in that bakery had turned to dust. But the choice they made that morning, to rebuild rather than destroy, to cooperate rather than resist, to choose life over pride, that choice would echo forward through time, a small light against the darkness, a quiet affirmation that even in the depths of defeat and shame, hope could still take root. The war was over. The occupation continued. But in one small German bakery, peace was being baked into existence, one loaf at a time.